What will hear you?
I know a lot of people couldn't get in.
Right. Hello, hello. Hello.
Hello! Speak up, Gary.
Well, you can hear me, Rosemary, so that's fine. I'd just like to share with you an idea that Rosemary's just had during the start of this evening, where she thought that maybe in February or March we'd close off the street here and have a street party, and unofficially, of course. Anyone from City Care would be wanting you to bring along your drums or something like that to help us. Put trestles out in the middle of the street and then say bring your own lunch and let's celebrate the centre of our city. So I went to my son, who's wants all the ideas to be his, and he gets that from his mother. And I said, what do you think of the idea? And he said, great. So Rosemary, you and Johnny are the committee. So
Is there free beer for committee members?
No, we give you a severe discount. God, there's always in for something. It's like being a bloody mayor again, you know, grizzle, moan. Anyway, it's really important that we look at the way we build our homes. And Pam and I were just driving through Papanui today, admiring all these beautiful old homes that have survived in Papanui, and agreeing that neither of us would ever want to live in one. Bloody cold dumps, and they cost a fortune even if you're painting them yourselves. So it's great to have a fellow tech boy, Bob Burnett, here. You were tech, weren't you? You were. Architects don't like admitting whether they went to tech or uni. It's a bit of a thing, isn't it? I'm a very proud tech boy. But Bob has really pushed the barrow in this country for the terrible building standards that we have for our housing. And so, without further ado, Bob Burnett, over to you.
Thank you, Gary, and thanks for inviting me along, and
Cool.
At short notice.
Don't tell them.
So,
Were you the fourth on the list?
We couldn't get a speaker.
I'm the stand-in second choice. Yeah. Anyway, you're stuck with me now. But I'll start by telling you about the Superhome Movement. So I'm a architectural designer. Bob Burnett Architecture is my business, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about what we've been doing with the Superhome Movement. And just, if you haven't got a magazine, then I think we've run out. Might be a few on the bar at the back. But there's a map in there, which is the map that's up here. So this year is our 4th year with the Superhome Tour, and that's by far the most successful event that we've done. We do quite a lot of things and have quite a lot of ideas, but has anyone been on the tours previously, previous years? Good, yeah. Yeah, I remember Gary here came on the tour, and Vicky Buck had her house on the tour a couple of years ago, and it was supposed to be anonymous, so he took a photo of himself on the toilet and texted it to Vicky. Which was very naughty, but that's Gary. So, you know, we've got, this year it's a slightly different format, so it's only one weekend, so don't think you're going to go next week, because there isn't a next week. So it's Saturday and Sunday, and it's in 11 days' time. And we've got 9 beautiful super homes, and they're all shapes and sizes. So we've got everything from a 70 square metre, almost not quite a tiny house, but a small house, and right up to big, substantial family homes. And they're all super. And I'm going to tell you about what a super home is today. And the tour this year is going to have electric buses. So we've managed to score the electric buses courtesy of Christchurch City Council. Thank you very much to them. And so there'll be 4 buses circulating the homes that will be free to ride
Cool.
And those will be, you can probably, we'll put some information on Facebook and the website about where they're leaving from. They'll be probably at a few car parks around the city, Ara, and maybe a couple of sports grounds where you can leave your car for free, hop on the bus. So we're promoting sustainable green transport as well as green homes this year.
Cool.
And we've also got the Yugo share electric cars, so that if you register, it's a good idea to pre-register for the tour because you get your quick fast-track entry to the homes just with scanning a code on your ticket, and then you get on the buses. And if you pre-register, you go in the draw to win a free BMW i3 electric car for the weekend. You've got to give it back at the end of the weekend. So normally it costs $99 to hire one of those for the weekend, and so you can cruise around one of those. But we've also got a discount price for people who are going on the tour. All right, next slide. Oh, just back it up a bit. Back up the bus, Gary. So this year we've also got virtual tours. So if you go to the website, you can actually take a 3D tour of these houses online and have a look through. And it's the first time we've done that, so it's interesting technology. If you want to sort of have a recap and look back at some of the houses you visited, you can sort of do a virtual walkthrough online later. And that's in its infancy, so we're developing that to include educational information inside those virtual tours. So watch this space. Next time we do a tour, we'll have that. So this has been an annual event for 3 years. This is the 4th year. This year we're doing 3 tours over one weekend. Last year we did one marathon tour, and it was 12 homes over 3 weekends. And we just think it's a little bit less arduous, a little bit less onerous for the owners to have their homes with thousands of people coming through over one weekend. So we had approximately 10,000 people attend last year. So from a little idea, we've got quite a large outreach with the community and educating people about why we need better homes. And I think the main reason is health. People talk about a housing crisis and they're talking about supply and cost. I think our housing crisis is really a health crisis. And I think the government has no idea what to do about housing. So we can't wait for the building code to change. It's not fit for purpose, and it's about 20 years, at least 20 years behind other developed countries. So we've decided we're just going to do things from the ground up, and our thing is open source sharing. That's last year's tour, so we'll just flick on from that, Gary. So these are some of the homes. You've got your magazine, so we can just brush over this. Click, click, and next. Virtual tour, so I've already talked about that. So I don't know, how many people went to Bill Reid's talk last weekend?
Last weekend.
3 weeks ago? Yeah, anyway, brilliant.
Brilliant.
So I'm doing a tour on a national tour, Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, talking about regenerative design with Jerome Partington he's probably New Zealand's preeminent sustainability regenerative architect, and from JASMAC. So he's working on the Breathe project, and so they're a huge firm, and I'm honoured to be doing that with him, and so he knows a lot more about it than I do. So I'll be learning on the way, riding on his coattails. So we're doing that. It's a 3-hour gig, and it's ADNZ, the Architectural Designers Institute. They have organised that. It's $25 for members, but it's also open to the public, so $60 for. So I better say something important if you have to pay $60. But regenerative development, isn't that amazing? Just thinking about, instead of doing less harm, actually doing something good. And what does that look like? We talk about footprint and reducing your footprint. But I was speaking to Jerome today online, and he was talking about handprint. Handprint is what you actually do, what you add, what you do that's good, instead of doing less harm. I really like that concept. So, just
Bob, will you send Gary the details of that to put in the newsletter so when
sure.
it comes?
Yep, you can do that. Next one, yeah. So, what is the Superhome Movement? So, it's really about, like I said, it's about sharing. And, I decided when we started this 4 years ago now, that this issue is too important to hold trade secrets and, the professional rivalry and the normal sort of behaviour of one-upmanship and trying to be better than your sort of colleagues. And so we just share everything, because I think every time I finish a project, I've learnt something, the next one's going to be better. So if I give away all my ideas today, I'm continually improving and moving on. And we've really created a new culture for the members. There's probably about 25 architects in Christchurch, about 30 builders, but it's now a nationwide group, Superhome Movement, and it's all about just breaking down those barriers and sharing information, because, boy, we've got a lot to do. We're just at the start. And, I like to talk about these words here, walking the talk. That's really important. How many people went to the share an idea thing? About 50% of people said, let's have a green city in it. They weren't talking about a lot of grass. They were talking about sustainable buildings. And what have we got? We don't see a lot of solar panels around. And, my area is not so much commercial, it's more housing, but so I can probably critique the commercial and not get into trouble, but I'll try not to swear too much because there's a video camera over there. But housing, we've pretty much carried on doing what we were doing before the earthquakes, and that's really concerning. We had an opportunity to do much better, and we squandered that opportunity. But it's not too late. There's still lots of gravel car park around in the city. Yeah, so, and on that, I went to Cardiff and did a talk over there for a conference on sustainable architecture, and late last year, and I had the opportunity to stop in Germany and France. And in Germany, there's a place called Homestar where they're built residential, mainly residential, but some offices and other schools and commercial as well, but mainly housing, and it's all to the passive house standard, which is a German standard. It's about $1 billion development with 4,000 people housed there. They took an old railway shunting yard and just thought, well, we're going to build the biggest group of sustainable houses in the world. And, that was a vision that someone had. We just needed more vision in Christchurch, and it's not too late. We can still pick up the ball and run with it. So Superhome Movement, it's not just about sustainability, design. It's really important. What does it look like? What does it function like? Resilience. Boy, do we know about resilience in Christchurch. And I'm talking about not just the people, but the buildings. Quakestar is a rating system. I don't know if you read everybody reads Gary's email, don't they? Yeah, so he writes it. Yeah. But Quakestar was something that I instigated after the Canterbury earthquakes, and Dr. David Hopkins, an engineering guru, developed a rating tool for how your building performs. Initially for commercial buildings, but now also for houses as well. And I think that's really important. I was just speaking to someone today who wants a super home in Wellington, and that's top of mind for them. And it surprises me, human beings, how we have short memories and how we just carry on doing things the way we've always done them. So that's a big part of it. Green, obviously, that's the main thrust of what I'm talking about. Energy is a big part of it. But also affordability, because there's a lot of people in this city that are living in fuel poverty, a lot of people in houses that are too cold and they can't afford to turn the heating on. So energy and affordability are intrinsically linked. Energy poverty, child poverty, So last but not least, health. The most important thing for our city is to have healthy residents, and we're living in unhealthy houses. Over 50% of our homes have mould, visible mould. And there was a recent survey by Brands. So I think not just new homes are important, how we deal with retrofitting, properly renovating our existing building stock is really important too. So we're at this point here, the 2.5%, we're the innovators, and that's what it is. So 98% of homes in this country are built to the New Zealand Building Code. And we are, with the Superhome Movement, we're hoping to get to this tipping point, 13.5%. So take the early adopters. Once we get to that point, then the rest just follow. The early majority, the late majority. The laggards take a bit longer. The laggards are the people that set the building code. So this is Superhome number 1. So 4 years ago, actually, almost 4 years ago, we finished this house, and it was launched. We had the mayor come and cut the ribbon, TV cameras, and there was a big furore. And we thought, well, we actually did 2 homes. We did a single-story home as well, and so we sold that one. We kept this one, and we're occupying that as our office at the moment. Probably not forever, but that's where we are. And that's the first 10-star home. And great, because basically we used that momentum to launch the Superhome Movement, and the rest is history.
How much did that sell for?
The one next, a good question actually. The one next door, the single-story one, that sold for 620,000.
Really? Good.
If it was a 3-bedroom home, it was a lot different to this one. It was more sort of a Canterbury style home, and this is a bit more urban. Some people say this is the ugliest house on the street, but the other one was a bit prettier. Everybody likes different things, but good. It was a good case in point, because we had that valued before we built it by so we could get the mortgage, and I think it was 530 it was valued at. And then I asked the valuer, what would this be worth if it was a 3-star home? So building code is 3 stars. And he said, well, it would be at least 10%, probably 15% less. So I was conservative, and I sort of worked it out that it was 29% more than a standard home, what we sold that for. So it only cost us 10% more to build it. So if you put better quality into the build, you're building better equity, as well as a better warm, dry, healthy, comfortable place to live. So it makes a lot of sense, and you'll have no power bill. So this claim to fame is this has no power bill. Let's move on. I don't have time to talk about the details of that house today, but we do have an open home every Saturday. The first Saturday of every month. For the first year or 2, we were doing it every weekend, and then I decided I wanted my weekends back, so we do it the first Saturday of every month now at 2 o'clock. So, here's the incentive to listen carefully, because I'm going to give away a copy of this book, which has that 10-star home in it, to the person who has the best question, or the best answer.
Pressure.
I'll look after it.
You've already got one, haven't you? Yeah. So Gary's going to administer that competition. Okay, so it's got grey water recycling. It's got 18 solar panels, batteries. It's a nice place to work from. So
Beautiful.
yeah. Shall we carry on, Gary? So this, you can't really see that with this lighting, but this is when I knew that I'd really made it, because this was supposed to be on the back of a bus, but this was on the back of a door in Riccarton Mall, Westfields. My wife took a photo of this, and I thought, well, when you make it to the back of the toilet door, you've really made it. Yeah. So I've already talked to this, where do we sit? So building code 3 to 4 stars. It's pretty pathetic, really. Auckland tried to implement 6, and in their unitary plan they failed. Christchurch tried the same, and they failed. Jerry Barley said, no, we're not having that. The standards have to be set by government. This is where we think you should be, 6 to 10 star. Actually, Christchurch climate, it should be 7, because it's got a bit diluted. This is Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, and here he's launching a hydrogen bus. And so they have, they've been talking about how they're going to solve climate breakdown, and they've earmarked £500,000 for insulating homes and offices. And I think that's pretty good. We need an effective policy in New Zealand to fix our building stock and promote better building standards. So the other thing is here, RIB, the Royal Institute of British Architects, they've come out and declared a climate emergency like a lot of people have, and they've basically said that you're not able to enter architectural competitions or House of the Year unless you meet certain environmental credentials. And I think that's to be applauded and music to my ears. So, it's no longer a beauty contest, it's does this house actually perform and protect its people. So, in effect, the building code is that. It's supposed to be a level of protection, but that's a fallacy because it's not adequate. And, So, the Bill de Blasio, the New York mayor, he's come out and said, well, in New York, I'm banning full glass buildings. I'm dismayed in Christchurch by the full glass buildings that have been going on through the rebuild with, glass on the south side. It's pointless. It's never going to have any sun on that side. And it's just a big heat loss. I don't see the point of it. I think it's lazy architecture. And I think we need to do a lot better than that. So I can say that because I'm not getting into trouble because I'm not doing commercial buildings. A big thing is, let's just build what we need. I say just only build space that you're going to use every day. Don't build a 4-bedroom house with 2 empty bedrooms for when people come for 1 week at Christmas time. It's absolutely excessive, and we've got a housing crisis and we're building to excess. It just doesn't make sense. The rest of the world, house sizes are trending downwards, and we really need to we build bigger houses than the Americans. We're the second biggest houses in the world, and it's a double whammy because they're really cold and they're really expensive to build. So we're getting a bad deal all round, to put it politely. So this is the floor plan of the 10-star home. There's no passageway. So nobody ever came to me and said, Bob, I'd like more passageway in my house. So if you can avoid waste space and just eliminate space, make it spatially aware, and everything has a space and you've got the right amount of storage, but that's great in 2 respects, because if you just build a smaller footprint, then you can put more into the quality of the build. And also, it's going to be more sustainable. It's going to be using less materials, but it's also going to be using less energy to heat it and less maintenance. And I think we should get off this mentality of how big a house can I get for how small a square metre rate, and building it for the next people that are going to come along so that you can make a profit on it. Let's just build homes to live in rather than using homes as an investment primarily and then trying to live in them with weeping windows and horrible conditions. So, got to take my hat off to Christchurch City Council. They've been brilliant in collaborating with us and partnering with us on the tours and supporting the Superhome Movement. And this project here, last year they actually partly funded, subsidised the Homestar ratings for the buildings, for the homes on the tour, and that was great through their Innovation Sustainability Fund. So this project here is a social housing project that I got involved in with the council. They asked me to Homestar rate the homes, and I looked at the concept and I just said, there's no point. I can tell you now, they're 3 stars. They're atrocious. And then they asked me to redesign it. And it went from 33 units, I think. In the end, we had 35. It started as row housing that was all facing the wrong way.
Yeah.
So you get a little bit of sun in the morning, a little bit, not much because that's the side the garage is on, a little bit in the evening, and then all day no sun with these sort of cave-like units. And so we took that and we blew it apart and we made it so that every dwelling, we produced more dwellings, bigger yield on the site. So 1 hectare site, it was a brownfield infill development, replacing some existing council housing. And we made it so that every home had all day sun to just about every room. That is the key thing. Humans like sun. And it really concerns me what's going on in the fringe here, and with the apartments. You know, you've got apartments, bang, 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 and then you've got them rotated 90 degrees, bang, 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 going the other way, sausage units. One of those is completely wrong. We need to wake up and realise that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. A lot of these apartments that are proposed, they'll have no sun all day, and then they'll get blasted with sun in the late afternoon, so it's going to be too hot, so you can't go to sleep. They haven't really thought that out. It's too regimented. It's not organic enough. Yeah. Lack of thought, and I think that this big, what was it, the master plan called? You know, the 100-day plan, the blueprint, really ill-conceived. We need to recover from that. So I couldn't help myself in this. There is 10 units that are a multi-unit block in here. There's a standalone Church Square 10-star house, except it's built to 6 stars, so it's more affordable. But and I had a couple of those on the end of the multi-unit. So there is some multi-unit, but a lot of standalone and 2s and 3s and things like that. And and just building some community. There's a green field where people can play and kids can play, and that's also the stormwater retention. So just let's move on, Gary. We don't have time to. So what's important? I don't know if you can read that, but across the top, these are the attributes. Down the side, these are the rating systems. LEED is the American one. Homestar is the New Zealand one for housing. Green Star is for commercial buildings. Passive House, that's the German standard that I mentioned. That's really about energy and air tightness. But there's a lot more to a good building than that. That's very sort of physics-based, science-based. And I like it, so I'll take those numbers and I'll use that, and then I'll think about all the other stuff. But living building challenge, this is what Bill Reid uses and talks about a lot. So look at all the things, and I like some of these ones down the end. Responsible industry, equity, beauty and spirit. And how about a rating for beauty and spirit? How does that work? Inspiration and education. That is where we're at with the Superhome Movement. Inspiration and education. So trouble with rating systems is they're all very well intentioned, but they have very little uptake and very little impact. So only 1 in 1,000 homes are rated. So we need to think outside that and think of what's our plan. What are our targets? What's our strategy? How are we going to solve climate change? So which one of these people has the most effect on public health? I think health is the biggest issue, by the way. So if we all lived in healthy homes, we would have 180,000 fewer days off. We'd have 30% less hospital admissions, $154 million saved in hospital costs. 28,000 children go into hospital every winter, and they get fixed up and then they go home, and a week or two later they're back again because they're getting put back into unhealthy homes. 1,600 people die in Christchurch in winter. It's called an excess winter mortality rate. Other countries don't have that, or they have it in much lesser numbers. So, it's not good. Let's keep going, Gary, before people get too depressed. Oh no, let's go back up. Sorry. So I couldn't find a Lego architect, so I photoshopped the polar neck, black turtleneck and the glasses. But yeah, anyone got the answer?
The architect.
No. Yes, but you've already got a book, so we'll have to try a different question. So or give it to a friend. But the architect, only 5% of homes are designed by architects. Most of them are just built by group home building companies. The doctor, he fixes people up. What's causing them to get sick? It's the builder. And did you notice that was my politically correct female construction worker?
No, go back.
But you said the doctor.
See.
Oh yeah, but it is a he, but it's a she, the builder.
Alright. I'll give you that one.
Okay, so, a third of 7-year-olds have asthma. I have a 7-year-old. And, I was living in a nice, warm, comfortable, this is another story for another day, but I'm still waiting for my insurance from Southern, no response, which is not okay. It's despicable, and it's caused us to live in an old villa for the last 8 years, and we've been paying 2 mortgages. We've been paying a big mortgage for a house up on the hill. My son has asthma. And would he have had that if he was living? Probably not. But, a lot of people have had a hard time. Christchurch, we have the highest suicide rate in the world, which is horrible. Our residents, 90% say their homes are too cold. We've got our nice red, yellow, green bins, but per capita, we're one of the worst places in the world for waste. We really need to pull our socks up. So I've already sort of talked about health, but the World Health Organization has standards for health, and 18 degrees is the minimum for bedrooms, 21 degrees for the young, very young and elderly. A new home in New Zealand can have single-digit temperatures in the bedroom. My old villa had 5 degrees in the bedrooms with no heating on. I got the extra insulation in the ceiling and the bats under the floor from Warm Up New Zealand scheme, and 7 degrees is what I've got now. Whoopee! You need to do the walls, you need to do the windows, you need to do a proper deep retrofit. Just doing what the government suggests is not sufficient.
It's a 40% improvement.
So this is my dig at the building code. So if you do less than building code, then you go to jail, a 3-star. So that's what we aspire to. That's our target. So is that a good target? But no. And it's because building companies are in a race to the bottom. They can make it slightly cheaper. They're a hero. And to hell with what's good for the occupant. So, sorry, building companies, we need to do better. So this is a tool. This is a slice through the 10-star home, and I'm calling this a dashboard, housing HPAD, housing performance and affordability dashboard. So the idea here is it's an interactive model where you can change things. You can put the solar panels on. You can increase the glazing from double glazing to triple glazing. You can see what the footprint is, carbon footprint. You can see what the cost to build is, what the monthly power bill is, mortgage calculator. What would happen if you had an 8-star? You don't need a 10-star, it's probably the wrong target. A good 8-star could have 0 energy. Take what you'd normally spend on your power bill, put it on your mortgage. How's that going to affect your situation? So this is what this is about. This is about that sort of paradigm shift and changing thinking. And then I've already talked to this, but the last piece is property value. you've got a more valuable property anyway. And then if we can do it, what I want to do is put a little 3D person in there, and then you can see that as it goes down the scale to a 1 star or a 2. 80% of homes are 2 star, by the way, but mine's probably a 0 star. You can see the skin colour change and the nose start to run, and if he's standing up he might fall over eventually, and that's one of the 1,600 excess winter mortality rate people. Shouldn't joke about that, but this is the anonymous house that Gary told everyone about in Rickerton. This was the first house where we used structural insulated panels. So this went from foundation down to roof on in 2.5 days. So I sent a text to Vicky and I said, "Do you realise your house has landed?" And she was happy. But so this is the way forward. Prefabrication. It's been this sort of unrealised potential in New Zealand, and for some reason it's more expensive here, but it's cheaper everywhere else in the world. And they've been doing it since the 1970s, Japan and Europe. But it's got a nice feel, that house. So this is the house that is on the tour, and it's a 278 square metre site, but we've fitted a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom home. And it got ganged up on by its neighbours with large 2-storey houses being built because it was really soft, dodgy ground, and we had to work hard to design something for there that was going to get the sun, and it's got a special foundation because it's so crappy ground. But come and have a look on the tour. Let's just keep going. It's just about the panel systems. Now I don't know, you might have seen this already, but here's a group of, this is a sculpture in Germany. They've got a group of politicians standing around discussing climate change. So I don't care if there's still anyone who thinks that it's all a big hoax, because what's the worst thing that can happen? We're going to have healthy homes, healthy children, clean water, and we're going to be end fuel poverty, child poverty. It's not a bad deal if we do something about it.
Who's the one on the left?
So I met Jacindy, and she said, "Talk to Phil Twyford." And she said, "Have you met Phil Twyford yet?" And I said, "No, I haven't, but I'd like to." So I wrote to Phil Twyford. This is a couple of, almost a couple of years ago, a year and a half. And 5 months later, he wrote back to me. This is his letter. And he said, "I'm all for improving standards, but not at the expense of housing affordability." He doesn't get it. And I think he talked about Kiwi Build. I don't think he understood what Superhome Movement was. And then I wrote to everybody. I wrote to Jacinda, I wrote to all of the ministers responsible for environment and climate change and housing and building. Jenny Salesi, so she's responsible for the building code. We should be talking to her. She basically sent me a letter, fob off, just saying, "Sorry, I'm too busy." But most of them were more polite than that and said, "Talk to Phil Twyford." Everybody said, "Talk to Phil Twyford." But he's gone now. It's now Megan Woods. So let's hope for better. I really think we need to, community-based, we need to create our own standards from the ground up. The standard for timber housing in New Zealand is called 3604. I think, what does 3605 look like? And we call it the standard for healthy housing. Let's just do it ourselves from the ground up. We can't wait for the government. It's too important, and they're not going to get it right. They have no idea. My vision for the city is this could be like the laboratory for the world. This could be the petri dish, and we could lead the way. We could go from being in the doldrums, being the worst, to being the best. And part of the reason I wrote to all of those politicians is I was trying to hit them up for some dough to go to England, because I got invited to talk and to be part of Prince Charles's 70th birthday and the 70th anniversary of the Commonwealth. So his people asked me to go over there, and I couldn't fund it, so it's probably happening about now. But you know, all the way over there, they're noticing what we're doing and what's happening with the Superhome Movement, and our own government isn't talking to us. It's disappointing, to put it lightly. But you know, Christchurch City Council gets it. Can we do something on a local level? I think we probably can. You know, Vancouver City, they've created their own building code. They thought, we're not going to wait for Canada to do it. We'll do our own building code. Let's keep going, Gary, because that's too technical. I don't understand that. Yeah. I already mentioned Quakestar, but I think it's really important that we build to be not just sustainable but more resilient. And I know a month or so ago we had, is it Melissa?
Yeah.
Talking about insurance. And I didn't make it along, but I saw the video, so it's an awesome thing to have the video to look back at. Because Tuesday's usually my most important socialising day. But seriously, no, earthquakes and what's happening with insurance in this country, it's a disgrace. It's an international disgrace. And the fact that people say how we're so lucky because we had such good, we're only lucky if they actually pay you and if they actually do things properly. And I think we're going to have quake syndrome in the future, and that's fixing all the botched repairs that have been shoddily done.
Started already.
Yeah, you know, Japan, they have about 5% of people have earthquake insurance. They just build their buildings so they're not going to be damaged. Base isolation. I was discussing with a lady in Wellington today. Let's make the first base isolated house in New Zealand, in Wellington. The first super home in Wellington will base isolate it. And, you know, top of mind for a lot of people there. They've probably got, on paper, they've got a higher risk, but I don't know how that works. You know, before the Christchurch earthquake, there were no known faults here. We didn't think it was an issue. Still, Christchurch has a lower earthquake engineering standard than Wellington. I'm not sure how that all works, but yeah, so this is my beautiful home, which was very innovative, and this is where, you know, I got to experiment, if you like, with big budgets, with homes on the hills. And I had no money when I started this project. I just borrowed it all. I was really cocky, and I got it done, but it had thermally broken foundations, which are now properly broken after the earthquake. It had thermally broken glazing, it had a lot of innovation, and it allowed me to test ideas and work out what will work in a more affordable home for the mainstream. And I think that's really important, because after the earthquakes I thought, well, what's the point in designing a handful of homes for wealthy people when we've got thousands of homes to rebuild in Christchurch? And that's the reason I started the Superhome Movement. So this was, people call this the icing on the quake. Do you remember we had a big snow dump after the earthquake? Foot of snow? And it's my boy, and those two dogs are beautiful, but they're the reason that we couldn't get a proper rental house, because if you've got two dogs, you go to the bottom of the list. So this house was great because it was one that we designed for some kind clients who said, they phoned me the day of the earthquake and said, you're welcome to go and stay in our house as long as you need to, because they were still living overseas and hadn't got their job transfer. So I got to test drive a brand new home that they hadn't lived in, and it worked well. And for 6 months we were there, and then they came back and kicked us out. So indefinitely became 6 months. And then we moved to the next one, which this little beauty here, the worst house on the best street in Merivale, and that had problems. So keep going, Gary. So when we moved out of there, we had to clean the mould off the leather sofa and off the bottom of the furniture. It had rising damp, and a lot of houses in St Albans are like that. So that white stuff is mould. So if you clean that off, it'll be back there in a couple of weeks anyway. It could be fixed, it's just landlords don't want to do it. But now they probably have to do something. as of 1st of July this year. It's probably not going to help a lot, but at least it's something. So we bought this house, and I think it's because we can do something to it, we can make it better, and this is going to be our super reno to show how to properly renovate a house instead of doing a half-hearted job. Because I think to do a little bit and not do it properly is worse than doing nothing at all. You think you fixed the problem, but you haven't really. Here's some nice Housing New Zealand units on Blenheim Road, and you can't really see it in this photo, but the bottom level has full height glass. We just keep going, Gary. Oh, sorry, that's out of sequence, but really, this is what I was talking about, you know. What is that, you know? And you've got these, it looks like a kindergarten or preschool or something, but you've got these units that are facing one way and units that are facing the other way. No thought for sun, no thought for doing something for humanity, and just to stop us from feeling like throwing up every time we look at it. Ridiculous. But that was out of sequence. But here, exactly the same design, 30 units on Blenheim Road. Here's 10 units, and I pick on this one, unfortunately, sorry Housing New Zealand, but I pick on this one because it's across the road, up the other side of Church Square. It was built at about the same time. The then Prime Minister opened it and said, this is great, this is the way forward with the rebuild. They have weeping windows, they're too cold, they're mould factories, and they're relatively new. Building code, I've already touched on this, it describes. Is that a good target? No. So I think tell me, Gary. I think we've probably run out of time, but just one last thing. ANZ Bank. This is a great initiative. ANZ Bank have introduced 1% of your mortgage rate if you build a Homestar home, Homestar 6 or above. So hopefully that sets the cat amongst the pigeons, and because there's very few in Christchurch, sadly. So let's see more of them. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Bob. That's great, Bob. Thank you. Questions, comments?
Did someone say yep?
Really good presentation. Fantastic.
Thank you.
You go way back to your slide that showed the laggards and you at one end and the laggards at the other end. I mean, might be too far back to go. But anyway, I'll ask the question in the meantime. There it is. Can you tell me where Mike Greer sits on that, and others, and Fletcher's?
They're the same as all the home building companies. They're building to building code, and it's not fit for purpose. Sorry, we might have to edit this video later.
So what does a 7-star one look like? Can you talk about 10 this one? So when you're looking at 6 or 7 or something that you may go to aim for, what's it look like?
So
Repeat the question, Bob.
what does a 7-star look like, and what should we aim for? So I really think it's a 7, and they talk about a 6 being 2.2% more cost to build and having 50% of the running cost. Your power bill will be roughly half. So, but I think there's a few things that we need to do, like insulate the edge of the foundation properly and have decent windows. That I think it really needs to be a 7. But if you want to learn more about the details, there's an awful lot to think about when doing a home. And my advice, if you're going to take away anything tonight, is do your research. Don't believe what builders tell you. And if you want to know more about it, come to the first Saturday of the month talk at the Church Square 10-star home.
I just wanted to ask you that an early slide you had of a building that sold at market for 500,000 or 600,000. Does that include the price of the land?
I can't remember.
So
The Eddington Square, I think it's that one.
Church Square one.
Oh yeah, that includes the land.
right. So that an approximate cost for building the home part of the property?
Yeah, probably. The land was quite cheap because I got a site with a cottage on it, and I demolished it and I built 2 houses where there used to be one. And deepest, darkest Addington, it's not that expensive to get land there. Yeah, so it was probably 220 for the land divided by 2 because I put 2 houses there plus cost of the building. I think it was probably about 350. The 2-story one's more expensive, it's probably about 450. But it's bigger. It's got 3 bedrooms, 2 good-sized bathrooms, and a really good kitchen in it. So,
would I be right in thinking that is a real challenge? A bit like in poor countries where people know what's a good diet, but they can't afford it, and they have to eat crap food even though they know it's killing them. Is there a sort of accounting?
The cost of building in New Zealand is ridiculous. And there's a myriad of reasons for that, and that's another talk for another day. But it's really concerning that you can import materials for half the price of buying them locally.
Yep. That needs to do.
What would that be per square metre, that one there? Do you mind saying some figure? Just the building cost,
I think
because at the end of this
I
is
think
what
it's,
that band is
I think
saying.
square metre rates is a flawed metric, and particularly when you haven't got a attached double garage. There's no garage for this house, but you can work it out. It's 450. It's 140 square metres. But yeah, I think we need to go past thinking about how do we get as cheap a square metre rate as we can, and think about. I tell people don't worry about that. We'll just design something and we'll get a cost estimate from a builder or a quantity surveyor, and we'll take it from there. And
thank you, Bob. I'm gonna whinge for about 20 seconds here, and then I'm gonna ask you a question. And I'm gonna whinge because I just want to echo that you're putting in the hard yards right now. That when everyone sort of said we want a city that is beautiful and green and healthy and is there for the long term, that's something that we're doing right now. We're building a site on Cambridge Terrace that has green roofs, solar panels, water catchment, adobe built into the walls, reclaimed materials, that's built as best as we can possibly build it. It's extremely hard. It costs a lot of money. There's a lot that goes into just R&D and just figuring out what works. But
it should be normal, but it's a lonely wilderness.
yeah. So one thing I'll throw out is because council is quite good about this, but when is government going to actually stand up, or the private sector for that matter, and actually invest in a long-term future for our building stock here in Christchurch? And 2 is, I'm really curious, do you track where your materials are coming from geographically? Because as the global climate becomes increasingly more unstable, and foreign materials that come cheaper are harder to get to New Zealand, do you prioritize getting things from, say, Canterbury or New Zealand before anything else?
I much prefer to use natural materials, local materials, wherever I can. But the reality is we're so far away from the rest of the world that we suffer. We don't get a lot of products here. There's not a lot of there are a lot of products here that are good, that are not manufactured in New Zealand. Yeah, it's an issue, and materials is a part of the Homestar rating, so you've got to think about that. You've got to think about the life cycle cost, and that comes into it. You've got to think about non-toxic materials. So one of the really interesting things is our houses, the air quality can be up to 10 times as bad as the air quality outside, but we don't know that. It's invisible. But we're breathing this air that is nowhere near good enough. We need proper ventilation, proper insulation, but also proper ventilation.
I just want to say something about Phil Twyford, since he's obviously not the person to speak to. I wondered if
Don't bother.
if there is a science advisor
in the housing area as there are in sort of other ministerial portfolios, or even the Chief Science Advisor, Juliet Gerard, because what you're really talking about is joined up thinking across a whole sort of swathe of different areas, from health through to construction to design. And it seems to me to be the sort of thing that politicians at the national level won't necessarily get, but their advisors, who have the ability to sort of think analytically and produce something on paper, might be very well placed to sort of position something like that, because doesn't it ultimately have something to do with well-being, and haven't we got a government that is dedicated to well-being budgets? And the thinking has got to come in from somewhere. I don't know that
I think it's a good question.
That it's altogether reasonable to think that all the good thinking is going to come from politicians.
Yeah,
but there are some very good advisors in there.
Yeah, well, there's Brands, Building Research Association of New Zealand, so their role is to research. They're not so much advisors, but their research should be taken more seriously, because they do good work and we work with them, with the Superhome Movement, and they sponsor the tour, by the way, so thank you, Brands. But government, whether it's someone within government who's an advisor or just talking to industry, they need to get better at that, and they need to listen.
Quasi-independent, that's why I mentioned them. A lot of them have
academic
background, and they're used to this sort of joined up thinking.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm not holding my breath. Let's do things ourselves, not wait for the government. You know, I didn't get to meet Phil Twyford, but my counterpart in Auckland did, and he's much better at talking than I am, and Andre, but I call him Superman. So he rang me up one morning and said, I'm having a meeting with Phil Twyford, what shall I talk about? And I said, ask him what MB stands for. Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, is it? And I said, ask him, can we talk to the one person that works in the I department, because there's not a lot of innovation happening? Maybe he lives in an unhealthy house and he has a lot of days off sick, and he liked that joke. But no, seriously, I don't think Phil's a bad guy. He had a tough gig. But Kiwi Build, I mean, why should all young people have a new house? I didn't get a new car for my first car. I got an old
Cortina Mark II.
shit bucket, you know. But it's like,
I know what you're saying.
we should be buying, the first house should be a do-up in Linwood, you know. It's like, what are they doing for the rest of the houses that need to be built for everybody else? They have no policy, no effective policy for housing.
They're focused on Auckland.
I was interested in the house you cited that was totally self-sufficient. Was that off the grid? Was the electricity generated exported? And I'd like to know how big the battery was and the cost of that.
It's really technical. Thanks for that. Yeah, no, that house probably could be off grid, but we had a 4 kilowatt commercial coffee machine, because I'm a coffee snob, and that uses about $120 worth of power. Yeah, come along on the Saturday and I'll walk you through, give you a tour and talk you through how it all works. It's a 5 kilowatt battery, but it's how everything works together. It's not that simple. So come to the presentation first Saturday.
Cole, last question.
Oh, thank you. There seem to be a few unanswered questions, but following up your comment about, why do we need a new house and first house and all that sort of thing, along similar vein, one of the things that seems to be missing from the kind of range of options here is multi-story living, even hostel or kind of lodge or communal kind of style living. Any research about, what is going to be affordable, efficient, healthy, all of those things seems to require to consider that kind of seriously. I mean, we know we've got this housing crisis. Kiwi Build seems to fail, just produces more unaffordable houses that the majority of people can't. Why isn't the government funding, big sort of hostel style living, that it's done really kind of in a sophisticated way with attention to community and well-being and all the rest of it. It seems to me this would have been one of the ways to kind of overcome some of these crises that we're dealing with.
I think it's a really good question and it's a really good thought. Kiwis like 3 fences and a curb. Christchurch people particularly, we're very suspicious of multi-unit dwellings, and because we haven't seen it done well. We've seen crappy examples of it. The first time someone does it well, it's like, oh, this isn't too bad. But we're not seeing it. Unfortunately, we're not seeing it done well here in the rebuild. Just directly over here, we've got a bunch of units, boom, 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 that are facing southwest. My goodness. Multi-story, multi-key. Let's think about what we're building, not just how we're building, not just the quality, but what type of residences, what type of dwellings are we building? You could have it so that you could have 2 bedrooms, or just because of the layout and the way it's planned, it could change and it could be multifunction and adaptable.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob. In a couple of weeks' time, we've got Kiwi Buy people here from the community housing sector, and that's a joint venture between Habitat for Humanity, New Zealand Housing Foundation, Community Housing Aotearoa, and it's about giving access to owning their own homes for people on lower incomes. So we're going to continue this discussion on housing. I'm hoping Campbell Roberts can come in a couple of weeks' time, but I'm involved with the community housing sector, and we are talking seriously to Department of Housing and Urban Design, and they are really open to new ideas. And I think that what we've had is housing's been in a whole lot of different departments, and there's been no great cohesion, and there is still no great discussion between government departments on what we should be doing as a country. And so what the community housing sector is trying to do is to look at the person, the whole person that is living in a home, and starting at that point and seeing how we can challenge things. So I think you'll find there's thousands and thousands of units to be built by the community housing sector, so maybe we should keep this conversation going. But it's always, I think Bob said earlier on, it's a hard path for those that carve a new road. It's hard work for those people to actually get accepted, because the status quo is not about this. And so the sort of questions that Peter raised about local ingredients, local materials, those are all issues that our society's got to get around, particularly when you look at what we were talking about global extinction. And so we, as a group of people, have a responsibility to make sure that the debate happens properly. So, look, thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
For your wonderful, inspiring debate. And if anyone isn't on our email list, come and see me and I'll put you on it.
Yeah. 3 minutes.